Hello and welcome. My name is Tricia Lauer, and I am the Vice President of Assessment and Curricular Affairs. I will be the host of this session, Teaching with Care, Humanizing Online Education with Community, Affirmation, Relationships, and Empathy. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC-related materials. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat, which will be moderated by our presenters. Also, we have enabled live transcription. If you'd like to use it, click the live transcription button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Now I'm pleased to introduce you to Dr. Jessica White, Dr. Donna Petheridge, and Stacy Gant. Thank you for being here today, and we look forward to learning more about your session.
Everybody for joining us this afternoon here on the East Coast and still morning over on the West Coast. My name is Jessica White. I am an Assistant Dean for Innovation in Teaching and Learning at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And my two co-presenters are Donna and Stacy. I will let them introduce themselves.
All right, I'm Donna Petherbridge. I'm Vice Provost for Digital Education at North Carolina State University. And actually it's Delta Digital Education Learning Technology Applications, but that's such a long name. I'm also an instructor in the Department of Educational Leadership, Policy, and Human Development. And I think it's a wonderful week to talk about caring. And I'm going to pass it over to Stacy.
Hi, everyone. We are so glad that you joined us today. I'm Stacy Gant, and I'm the Senior Director of Digital Learning at Delta at NC State. I also bring the experience as an online learner to today's session. I am 2 years into a fully online program, so I get to offer that perspective as well. So thank you for being here. Next, we're going to take a moment and we're going to go over the objectives that we've set aside for today's session. We've provided these to you on our slide, but I also wanted to take a moment just to emphasize two additional things that we really hope that we'll achieve today that are not written out here. The first is that we really hope that during our brief time together today, that we will actually generate a little bit of a feeling of a community and some connection between all of us today. We know our time is brief, but it can really be impactful. So that is something that we do hope that we'll be able to achieve. We have reviewed the attendee list for this session today, and there is a great deal of wisdom in this room, in this space. So we're really hoping that we're going to be able to pull out that wisdom of the crowd and work together to share our ideas and our experiences. So while we have assembled ideas and resources for you based on our experiences in the online classroom for many, many years, we want to work in collaboration with you to assemble a collection of best practices that follow this care framework that we're going to explain to you. And then at 4 points throughout the session today, we are going to pause and reflect. And there will be an opportunity for you to share and for you to advise. And we really hope that at each of those pause points that you can provide for us an idea or a recommendation, a best practice, or maybe a warning what not to do, because sometimes those can be the most positive, the most powerful examples. And if this happens today, we're going to end up creating a rich repository of ideas that we can take away from today's session to apply immediately to our online classrooms or to consider for the future design of our online learning experiences. To start us off, to describe this care framework for you, Donna is going to describe the first letter in the framework, which is C, which is all about building and nurturing online community.
So as Stacy said, the first pillar of our framework is community and care. So I want to talk to you about what it is and why does it matter. So at its heart, and if you'll advance the slide, Stacy, community is a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing a common interest, goal, or space. And building community in the online classrooms, it's significant because it helps create that sense of connection and belonging, which has been directly linked to student success. creating that community requires that we nurture relationships within that online classroom. And we as instructors can help create community in an online course through our presence. And our instructor presence is facilitated in part by us conveying that we are real people in that classroom with those students. We're more than just the course. When they're engaging in course content, we need to let our students know that we're not a chatbot hiding behind a screen. And there's a quote that's coming up on the next slide that we really like about just, I just want to highlight, a sense of belonging is crucial for enhancing the student experience. That's so, so important in an online class. And I want to talk to you now about some strategies for how to create it. Again, these are strategies that we use, and we're hoping to have a conversation with you about things that you use as well. So one of the things that we do as instructors, and Stacy will pop in the chat, my welcome video for you to watch at your leisure. But we provide welcome videos for the instructors, and that's just to humanize the instructor, to establish you as a real person, to talk about some of the things that you like to do outside of just being a teacher, and a little bit about things that you care about. So that is really important for our presence. Another thing that we do, we send welcome letters to students well in advance of the start of class. And those welcome letters are really the first way to break the ice with students. And we also do the first week of class orientation with the students. And that can be icebreakers that you do in Zoom. And of course, you have an introductory posting and those kinds of things. But when you're introducing that class, one of the things I like to do is I always like to talk to the students about why they're taking the course, because that way I can learn, well, some of them will say because it's a requirement in the program, right? But really what you dig into in that discussion is you learn about their interest and their educational backgrounds and what they care about. And that starts this sort of connective community where other students say, me too, and they connect with other people, which is so important. Another piece in that community creation right up front is that introductory forum, where I encourage students to share pictures and stories and their favorite food and their animals and anything else they want to share that helps them connect with others. That's so important. Also have to mention the group work discussion point, which I will notice that group work can be very challenging in online education because of the coordination, especially that adult learners have to do around group work. So that's its own challenge, and I acknowledge that. I personally use guided case studies where I treat the entire class as a group, and I'm able to do that because I have anywhere between 19 and 22 students, but they do pre-work and then we all get in a meeting and we discuss the case. And that's been such a great way to create community and really humanize the course. Especially my friend Jessica here does a lot of quick polls and temperature checks on her students. How are you doing? How are you feeling? And it can be about the class or just anything that's going on. Like if you come to class, how are you feeling tonight? You can do those at any time. And another thing that we often will do is have sort of a back channel for students to chat during the course. So I just would encourage you to think about these ideas as ways to create that community and work on that. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Stacy, who's going to let us all talk about that.
Thank you so much, Donna. I really, a lot of those suggestions resonate very strongly with me as an online learner. So we have reached our first pause point, and this is an opportunity for you all to share. There are several ways that you can do this. We have our chat, and I very much encourage you. You could use that as our back channel, as Donna mentioned, and share your ideas. We also hope that you will add some ideas and resources to a shared Google Doc that we've created for you all. You can navigate to that using the link in the chat. And this is going to be a living document, something that we use today, and it will continue on. And maybe you think of an idea tomorrow or next week, if you can just save this URL, you'll have that, at the ready to use at the time when you need to use it. So we'd like you to add at least one idea under the first heading for C. How do you cultivate community? And this really has a multi-parts to it, because what you do to create community, it might look different than what you do to sustain a community later on in a course or a program as students' needs change. So we'd love to hear your experiences. If you could add at least one idea. If you wanted to reinforce an idea that you already heard, such as that welcome video or sending out that welcome letter to your students as a way to start building comfort and building trust, which is really a foundation for any learning community. You could put that in there. I'm going to switch over to our Google Doc just so we can see ideas that are starting to pop in there. And as you all are sharing your ideas, and I'm wonderful to see, I can see we've got folks that are already adding. I wanted to share just one idea from a student perspective about building community. And when I first joined the online program that I'm in fall 2022, one of the first things that we did as a group of students was to agree upon a communication platform that we would use to interact with each other. And this was something that our program leader required us to do. And one of the rules of this student space, the student-led communication space, is that no faculty were allowed. It was like our own private clubhouse. 2 years later, having that space has proved essential to us as online students. And it's become our facsimile for many of those spaces where students naturally gather, coffee shops, the GA offices, libraries, and that space is used every single day to ask for resources, offer help, talk about academic topics, and also talk about personal topics. And our strong community has been nurtured by having access to that space. So that is something that has impacted me, and I just wanted to share that. So we are getting some great suggestions on here about how to use discussion forums, holding your virtual office hours as a chance to be together, to build that comfort and familiarity. So thank you all so much for sharing that. Jessica, Donna, anything you want to reflect on about cultivating community that you're seeing in our Google Doc?
I don't have anything to reflect on except to say these are great ideas and things I'm already doing. I'm taking them from you right now and I'm taking them back to my course. And if you don't mind, Stacy, since I know you have this in your cut and paste, if you'll pop my welcome video in there, because it's not just my welcome video, there's a whole YouTube channel of welcome video from instructors to NC State. And I don't mean in our recording in Zoom here, I mean like on the forum, just so people can find it easily later.
Oh, in the forum. I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah.
No
Just so you
problem.
can get back to it easily later.
All right, Donna, if you want to walk through letter A, we'll continue on.
All right, so our second pillar of what we talk about when we talk about care and online courses is affirmation. And I want to talk about what it is and why does it matter. So if you'll advance the slide, Stacy. That is our act of providing support and encouragement to the learner, recognizing them as a unique individual. And if you'll go back one more, Stacy, sorry, I wasn't quite ready yet. So we can't, and I acknowledge as an instructor, it is so hard when we have large classes to think of each learner as unique, but we have to really, really work on doing that. We can't lump them into categories. We have to really think about the value they bring as unique members of the community and acknowledge the individual challenges that they face. So every student in our space is going to need something a little bit different from us. So we need to work on, in our online courses, modeling those positive affirmations to students, especially in discussion forums and synchronous sessions, where we can affirm the variety of student experiences and honor the humanity in every single student. And I love the quote that we're going to share with you on the next slide. I'm just going to emphasize the point, the part here that says an affirmation opens the door. If you affirm someone, it opens the door to that community, that connection, that feeling of belonging in a class. So how do we create it? So I'm going to share with you some of our strategies, and then we'll pull some ideas from the community as well. So I've already talked about this a little bit in those intro things that I do in class, but part of that affirming a student is to make sure that every student's voice is heard through that willingness to get to know all the students in that initial conversation about why did you enroll in the course? Why is this interesting to you? And be really responsive and affirming to that. Some students might want a career change. Some students might want an intellectual challenge. Some students are maybe unhappy at their job, but affirm and acknowledge and respect all of those different reasons for around why they're here and validate those. And then one of the things we have to do as instructors is really affirm the communications in the class. And then, and when we're talking to our students, we say things like, that's a valid point. Thank you for sharing our experiences and your experience. And sometimes though, we have to redirect them, but still acknowledge their point. I understand that you see things this way, but how have you considered this particular research or this other experience? So affirming doesn't mean you just say yes to everything. You affirm what someone said and then help them expand their knowledge or their interest. I think also the affirmation is so important to be culturally responsive as an instructor. And a specific way that I've done that in my own course is to make sure that the content in the class is diverse. In the particular class that I teach, Instructional Systems Design, I have students read several articles on culturally responsive course design. And then we have a variety of activities and that students can do to show their knowledge. Everybody may not love writing papers, and I acknowledge everybody needs to write one, but there are other ways that they can show their knowledge and share their work by doing presentations and different kinds of interactions and work. So I try to really respect that. And also, I spend a lot of time on evaluating student work because I feel like that's an affirmation. Giving students concrete, fair feedback and not just a letter grade and a good job or a you could do better or just a grade. That's not affirming. Affirming is specifically finding things in their work and responding to them. It takes a lot of time, but I think that's so important to warmly recognize students for what they've done well and guide them to ways to improvement. So humanizing and affirming those students are so important, and those are different ways that I practice that. So Stacy, I believe you're going to take us back to a community response point here.
Yes, here we are at our second pause point. So again, this is an opportunity for you all to share your wisdom. Obviously, we can already see that there are great ideas coming from the crowd. So if you would go back to that Google Doc and start typing in your ideas. Again, maybe you want to just have one of the ideas you've already heard or add something that you've done or something that you've wanted to do. And one thing I just wanted to, again, bringing my experience as a fully online student, is I wanted to reinforce one of Donna's points about warmth, about that warm feedback. When you think about, again, if you're looking to build rapport and to build trust, that warmth also opens the door. I was thinking about, there's many models that relate to theoretical models that relate to online learning. And one is the theory of transactional distance. And I think you all know this if you teach in an online classroom, that you have physical distance, but you also often have fewer opportunities to interact in real time. And what comes from that is a great deal of psychological distance. And that is a real challenge. And as an instructor, you have to work to try to reduce that psychological distance. And that kind of warmth and approachability is a very effective way to do that. So being warm and approachable is one of the ways that your students are going to feel closer to you, and that psychological distance is going to reduce. And that's definitely been my experience as an online learner. So let's see what you all have said in terms of what can you do to affirm your online learners. And we're seeing some ideas here about affirmation announcements, highlighting contributions of students in the discussion forum and the great points that they make, and shining a spotlight on their experiences, and featuring student knowledge and their expertise, posing your students as partners. It's very social constructivist, so that's very, my heart is feeling really happy about that. There's a suggestion to create an affirmation wall, which I don't know what that is, but that sounds amazing. Maybe someone in the chat could talk a bit about that. The responsiveness and timeliness is an actual vital strategy for affirmation. Responding, don't ignore. That's maybe rule 101. Donna, Jessica, anything you want to say in response to these great ideas from our group?
The only thing that I would highlight,
Mhm.
is responding to emails and not ignoring. I have some students who reach out and are appreciative. That kind of no matter what time of day or night, I do try to be responsive to emails. And when they do slip through, because they do, I am apologetic, but still treat them like they are an actual person, individualized in my classroom and not just a number.
I love that you said that, because sometimes, Jessica, you and I will get emails from students saying, you all are responding to us, but Dr. So-and-so we haven't heard from, can you help? And we're like, let's not ever be one of those instructors, right? And whoever's idea it was for the affirmation wall, I want one. So I would love in the chat for someone to tell me how you do, like, if you do that through like a Padlet or something, I'd love to know more. about that.
I'm very excited about this this collection. It's happening. We are going to now move on to the third letter, which is R for relationships, and I'm passing the mic over to Jessica.
Relationships, they do matter so very much. And you can advance, Stacy. Stacy just mentioned being warm in the way that you talk to students matters, and it really does. Relationships are the state of us being connected. And she also mentioned the transactional distance. With an online environment, you typically are not as close to your students as you normally would be in a face-to-face space. But that doesn't mean that they are not still individual students and individual people with personalities, different needs, and different things that they are going through. There's a few different ways that relationships can be established in an online setting with classmates, instructors, and even the course materials. As an instructor, I really pride myself on being able to establish relationships with my students. And the relationships I have built haven't just been for a semester while I have been the instructor or the person grading, responding to emails, and things of that nature. They have turned into mostly year-long or multi-year relationships that have been mentoring opportunities for students to either work with me in a part-time capacity or work with me in a mentoring relationship. And I feel, and I've been told by several students, that they do actually see the long-term benefits when those relationships are established. It really helps. And I have students, I had one reach out a week or two ago asking if I would serve as a reference. So things like that do matter. Go ahead, Stacy. This is a quote that matters to me because you really cannot learn without a relationship, whether that is the relationship with the instructor or even the course content. And those relationships are really just bottom line important. Next slide. Online teachers can really begin establishing relationships in that inaugural course meeting, and really even before that. Donna mentioned that we send welcome letters, and we do before the semester starts. Another thing that I try to do is send regular course announcements. So they are typically weekly and even throughout the week, depending on what emails I'm getting from students with multiple issues or things that I'm seeing within the group for that semester. Hosting a virtual orientation during the first week is very helpful, as not every class is set up the same, not every instructor is the same, and students being able to know what is expected of them from a particular instructor is very, very helpful. It also helps them see that there's a real person behind the screen, not just a chat bot, not just somebody who is in the course but never shows up. Replying to emails, replying to help questions also helps students realize that the instructor is real. They're approachable. They are actually going to answer questions. And then just show care. Even all of us are dealing with different things. This week, maybe majorly, but we have gone through different life changes, losing parents, families changing through divorce or other things, but being caring to them, being present and really showing them that you are human too, and understanding that when they go through things, it's not always an excuse of trying to get out of an assignment. A lot of times they are dealing with life just as we are. And then providing individualized feedback to assignments. Most of my students tell me they love how detailed I am in my feedback because I do point out those positive things and even the things that they can improve upon, and they're able to grow throughout the class with that. Next slide. So some strategies for relationships, Stacy.
All right. This is our third pause point and our opportunity to share. So once again, if you could put an idea, something you heard that you liked, or something that you do to build a meaningful relationship, potentially lasting, like Jessica talked about, between you and your students, we would very much be so grateful if you would add to our repository. And as you work on this, I wanted to think about something that I've experienced as an online student, and it connects to Jessica's point to allow students opportunities to interact with classmates, teacher, and in content. One thing that my program did for us is at the very beginning of the program, in the first couple of semesters, we were put in different groups and really mixed up a lot. And it was very intentional for us to get exposure to different people in our program, to get to know the different people in our program, to learn about their interests, to learn about their personalities, to learn about their work styles. So there's a lot of that heterogeneity in our group formation. And again, this was purposeful. And then we got to know each other, the group at large. And later in the program, we've been able to more self-select into affinity groups. And those groups are often based around context. So the students that are focused in higher ed or K-12 or corporate and training. So we've been able to, based on the relationships that we've built with each other, now we work more in depth with smaller groups. And those affinity groups have been so important to us. So that strategy has worked really well for the program that I'm in. So I wanted to shine a little spotlight on that. I know I often hear from instructors about group formation is what kind of heuristics or approaches to forming those groups should they use. And I thought this approach to an online program has worked very well for getting people to know each other across a cohort. So some ideas are coming in onto our Google Sheet. There's some ideas about sharing photos and other things that are going on. And Jessica talked about showing that you're human too, because truly there can't really be any relationship building without a little bit of vulnerability. And if there's a wall up between you and your students and you don't let them in, why would they return that? So I think there is a little bit of vulnerability. Of course, it's all within appropriate measure, within appropriate boundaries, but I really like that idea. So someone has commented about transparency in their decision-making and how that's really important to relationships. That's also really, important to building trust, is if you can't see behind the curtain or understand the why, it's really difficult to build trust with your students. So I think that's such a wonderful point. Building a relationship by asking for feedback and demonstrating that you know that they have a lot of value and wisdom to share. I think that's just excellent. Jessica and Donna, what are you seeing on this Google Doc that you would like to emphasize?
I'll jump in and say I really like the point about transparency and instructional decision-making and sharing. I remember when I first tried the case studies, and I'm still trying to improve them. I'll tell the students, I haven't done it this way before. And at the end of this lesson, this session, I want you all to tell me what you thought. And they can tell me what they thought there in the chat or in like a little survey that I give them, because I'm trying to always tweak and improve. And I think that transparency hopefully will help them as they go on to be instructors too. But I love that.
And Donna, it's also showing you're part of the community too. And communities are based on mutual respect, and you are demonstrating your respect for them by asking for that feedback. So I think that's just spot on. It's really exciting. Thank you so much.
I'll just add that like one thing that happened this semester is because we built such a good community in the class with the students sharing. When one of the students in the class was impacted by Hurricane Helene, and she was offline for a few days, and when she came back on, like everyone was jumping in and being so supportive. It was just really wonderful to see how they built that connection as students, and they were reaching out and checking on her and pulled her right back into the class. So it can really help students get through tough things when they built that up front, and that was really lovely to see.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you said at the beginning about the tie-in to student success. But yes, this is just a good thing to do, human to human. It's just the right thing to do, sort of ethically and morally in connecting and reaching our students. But it also really has significant impacts on student persistence and retention. It matters. If you feel that people are looking out for you, you feel that people have your back and people notice when you're not there and there's a safety net under you, you're more likely to stick it out and get through tough times and finish your degree. So it has a big impact. Okay, we're going to move on to our final letter, E, empathy. Jessica's going to walk us through this one as well.
Yes, empathy, also so very important, and the last part of our framework. Empathy is really putting yourself in someone else's shoes, behaving with care and compassion. Very different from sympathy, because you're actually seeing how you would react if you were in that person's shoes. And it really creates an open and welcoming classroom. Some ways that you can do that is by using a liquid syllabus, providing accessible content, even though most students do not disclose, and even collecting personal biographies. That way you can draw back on things that students have mentioned in later class sessions. If you will go back a slide, I think. This is one that really hit me after I lost my mom several years ago. And it's be kind, because everyone you meet is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. And a lot of times, most of us are. But being kind to others really goes a long way when you really don't realize everything that is at stake. So 2 different ways that I just mentioned how to practice empathy are to use a liquid syllabus and ensure that course content is accessible. Collecting personal biographies is another one, and that can sometimes identify challenges that students are facing, whether they, for instance, with the Hurricane Helene, live in a certain area, or if they have different barriers that they are going through. I always tell my students, please talk to me. That way, when things are going on, I am able to be empathetic. I'm also able to direct you to different resources or even push you a different way based off of what you need. And that really requires that we as instructors model by demonstrating respect for all of our students, just being there and expecting a respectful conduct from them. So now we will go to the crowdsourced document.
Okay, so here we are. We have reached this final pause point, an opportunity to share. Well, not the final opportunity to share, but the last pause point on our letter E for empathetic teaching practices. So we would like for you to reflect on, what does empathetic teaching look like to you in an online setting? And how do you approach this? So if you would, please add your ideas. I recently had an experience where I had to, I guess you would say, fess up to my advisor that I had not made as much progress on some work that I wanted to make. And I was so nervous. I was so nervous. I thought maybe it's not worth it. This is all too stressful. But I did it, and I reached out, and she was so empathetic and shared her own experience and her own roadblocks and sticking points that she experienced. And I mean, the weight that got taken off of my shoulders was so dramatic, and it seems so small, but it's just so important. So let's switch over and see what we're hearing here for what empathy looks like to you in an online classroom.
Stacy, while people are typing, you said something that resonated with me so much about how one word from an instructor can take the weight of the world off a student's shoulders. And that's just something we have to remember all the time with the responsibility we have as instructors. And something that I do in my class is I pay attention to the last login. And if I see students not logging in for a while, I will email them and say, are you okay? Do you need anything? And again, I acknowledge that is hard when you have larger classes. And there are tools that can help push those in front of you a little bit more. But I had a student email me back a few weeks ago to say, I'm so glad you reached out. I was afraid to email you because I'm so far behind and I was embarrassed. And that student's now back on track. They just needed me to talk to them first in that situation. I think sometimes that's the case.
Yeah, it can be hard to reach out. It can feel embarrassing. And so you taking that proactive step, I'm sure that was huge. I hear a idea of a holistic Friday. I'm very interested to know what that is. I'm hearing all these great ideas. Um, to me, that sounds like it's a recognition of the whole student, the whole person. That yes, we're here as with our student hat on, but as Jessica said, we all have things going on that others don't know about. So I would think that has to do with some kind of appreciation for all of the realms of life that we're dealing with. But I would love if somebody would type in the chat what a holistic Friday is. And I see also an idea in the chat to send emails or text messages to students to check on them. I have heard from many instructors, and I don't know if this has been your experience, that they share their cell phone numbers with their students and encourage them to reach out and text. And often their peers are aghast. How could you do that? It will be abused. How could you? What are you thinking? And the opportunity is rarely used. But when it's used, it could actually be the difference of life and death. And I don't mean to be, inflating that, but it can make such a huge difference for students, even knowing that they have a way to reach their instructor that way. So I think that idea of texting out, and you're saying, Donna, you've done it and it's never been abused and you've taught online since 2008.
Yeah, and I do tell
That's
them to
pretty
text
amazing.
first so that I don't think it's like a calling about my auto warranty running out or something. Like, so I'll answer a text and then I'll take a call as soon as I know who the number's from, but never had an issue with that. And I've been doing this for a long time.
Same here. And when I go out of town or out of the country, I tell my students, rather than emailing me, please text. You will get a faster response if you text me because my phone is on me.
Well, I hope I'll see that list of ideas grow. We were right about the wisdom of the crowd. When we looked at everyone's titles and where you're coming from and your experiences, we got a glimpse into this, and it's definitely proven to be true. We're going to take a moment and reflect on the CARE framework, and then we'll open it up for questions. Donna, take it away.
Yeah, so there's so many models of online teaching and how you build communities and that kind of thing. So this is just the practice of CARE for us is just how do you pull all those things together that you read across the different pieces of literature and remember to intentionally do these every time you teach. So CARE is the way we think about it. So just back to kind of a big picture summary, and then we have some time to take questions and all of us just have a chat. So we're talking about community as the first pillar, making sure we create a space where students can come together and feel they belong and they feel safe and they feel valued as part of that community. And then in the affirmation role of this model, to really acknowledge the voice of every student and welcome those diverse perspectives and ideas. And then as an instructor, affirm the comments. As Jessica and I both do, really give feedback. Warm, thoughtful feedback. That is so affirming for people. Think about yourselves when you've been given just a letter grade or a performance evaluation. You just get a number and you're like, well, what does that mean? So really spend time affirming the others around you with direct feedback and meaningful feedback. And then the relationship part of this framework to really develop those positive relationships, which means that you come to auth class as your authentic self and you're vulnerable and you work with those students in that way. And then they'll reflect that back to you so that you can create this class where there's a feeling of mutual support. And then just practicing that empathy, really sitting in someone else's shoes to think about how something makes those feel, so you can really connect with your students and foster that positive online learning environment and climate. And then, all of us have challenges too in our lives. And if you can build this kind of practice of CARE in your class, I feel like every time I teach, I get back so much more than I give because my students are always so supportive of me too if something happens that semester. And as I get more adulty and am caring for an elder father and lost my mother too recently, I can't tell you what it meant to have just this another community that cared, that I had to be at and why, and how supportive they were. And I think this practice of care really gets to the bottom of humanizing that classroom and creating this safe and inclusive space, and contributes directly to students staying with us, sticking out the semester, staying in our programs, and having student success, which is what all of us want. And with that said, that kind of wraps up the way we view this model. So we're giving you our contact information. We have 5 minutes remaining, and we'll be happy to take any questions. We could certainly, if you want to, we could stop sharing a screen and get on Zoom together, however you want to do, but we'll look for questions in the chat or unmic or however you'd like to interact with us. And I'm just also reading through the document with collective ideas. I hope that you all take that away with you today, because there's some great stuff on there. And I still want to know more about Holistic Fridays if somebody wants to chat about that or speak up about that. That sounds like what I need for my day tomorrow, because it's been a week.
Jackie, do you have any suggestions? Can we stop the share so we could maybe open up the panel and see more faces?
We can definitely, you guys can definitely stop sharing it. The problem with some people might not be able to come off camera because they're going through
Okay.
the platform. So that might
I
be good.
understand.
But they should be able to unmute if they wanted to jump in or add their questions to the chat.
Okay, great.
I certainly appreciate that one of you thought this was a really useful presentation, so yay. We get excited about this stuff because we really care about our students and our programs. And we love having Stacy with us because she is amazing for the student perspective. And we are so excited that she's pursuing her doctorate and will eventually join the teaching profession here. So.
Oh, hi, this is Michelle Wiley. I really enjoyed your presentation. And the part about empathy, I was wondering, do you also kind of tie that into the emotional intelligence of working with a student, of, really going into that, of creating the community and figuring out where the student's coming from? Because a lot of times the students that are online, they're working, they have families, and they need a lot of other help, like of what you're saying. So the empathy kind of goes a little bit more into that as well.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say that you absolutely, as an instructor, have to use your emotional intelligence to dive into this empathetic framework of practice. And I try to really understand and empathize. And that's one of the reasons, actually, in my scheduling, I create what I call a flex schedule, that I don't have I have a suggested schedule, which drives some of my colleagues nuts, because they're like, if you don't have a deadline for everything, how do you get any student to do their work? And I'm like, I've never had an issue. Actually, a lot of students work ahead, or they might work a little bit behind, but if they know they have flexibility, I'm respecting them as students. And you mentioned they have jobs, they have kids, they have all this other stuff. And I know they'll get the things done. Sometimes they just need a flexible adjustment. And so things that you can do that are, I think that's helpful. And then Stacy's got some stuff in the chat as well. And I see there's a comment in here about how to cite this. I'll see if I can find you a citation for
Yeah.
our work.
Thank you, Donna. While you do that, I did just want to say you won't know what students are dealing with unless you ask. So you have to ask. Or, I mean, you could wait till they tell you, but I think it would be better to ask. So Jessica, do you want to talk about that bio that you do and how you approach that, and how you deal with also maybe student privacy and the information stays between you and the student?
Oh, absolutely. It's a separate assignment that they submit in the first week that just kind of allows them to tell me what's going on with them throughout the semester, or things that they may have coming up. And I've had students share different things that are happening that semester when they do know, like a wife may be pregnant, or somebody having surgery or whatnot. But knowing that that is coming up helps me help them, sometimes just by meeting them one-on-one and showing them how to plan ahead, or how to do different things to make sure that they can reach all of their goals.
I see that we have 1 minute left. So if there's maybe one more question, or Tricia, do you have any closing comments for the session?
No, I just would like to extend my hearty thanks to you, Donna, Stacy, and Jessica. And thank you to the audience for participation in today's session and especially your active participation. This was very beneficial to all of us. I encourage you all to use the survey, which I have linked in the chat, to nominate TLC presentations for conference awards and to share your feedback about the conference experience as we wrap things up today. And I hope that all of you enjoy the rest of TLC, and I appreciate the time that you spent today sharing with us the care.
Well, thanks so much for having us. We were delighted to be here.
Thank you all very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.